You know what Beat Saber is. I don't need to introduce the game itself, but let me just introduce the video quickly. Beat Saber is a game that means a lot to me. I have a lot of history with it, and I figured I want to talk about this in a video. However, in order to cover my story with Beat Saber, I would also basically have to talk about my entire story with VR. But likewise, if I did my story with VR, half of it would be Beat Saber. So it's just meet in the middle and do my story with VR and Beat Saber at the same time. However, this story starts in 2018, so we got to get in some more appropriate fit. Yes, this is one of the oldest t-shirts I have. It's representative of that era because I don't wear this thing anymore. Look, Japanese words. I've been interested in VR ever since I'd seen a video of DanTDM playing Minecraft with an Oculus Rift development kit, so quite a while by this point.
Down, I can not only see my feet.
So fast forward to 2018, and VR is finally like a thing. And the main two options were the Oculus Rift, which had finally become a consumer product, and then there was the HTC Vive, which was the de facto standard for VR. And obviously, dream setup, but completely unobtainable. It was a lot, and it required a very expensive computer. So, first step, let's get a computer, because for the longest time, I was running on really crappy laptops that my parents owned, and then eventually got my own crappy Dell laptop. And 2018, I got a bit of spending money, and I was like, okay, let's get a computer. In fact, I have the computer still. So, this was it. It was a pre-built HP, I believe, Pavilion Power Gaming PC, whatever that means. It was £600, but I believe after my dad was scammed with a bunch of warranty and McAfee upsells at Curry's, it was about £800. But it had a graphics card, and it could play much more than my laptops could at the time. I remember the two games that made me want to really switch was, first off, I got Dirt Rally, and that just would not run on Intel at all. And secondly, I really wanted to emulate the Initial D games, and they require a dedicated GPU as well to run the emulation. At least they did back then. So, I got this. I remember at the time, you'd see on stores a lot of computers with VR ready stickers, because that was the big thing at the time. Right now, you'd probably see GPUs with like AI ready, because that's what the current trend is, but I digress. So I got a computer, and this is summer 2018. Next step was logically getting a headset. However, the Vive was still too expensive, but I discovered a different line of headsets. That's right, I'm talking Windows mixed reality. The two main videos I can remember about this, the first one from Linus Tech Tips, which actually was like, yeah, this thing sucks, but it made me aware of it. And the second one was from a channel called Blunty, which basically was like, these are actually really good and you should buy them, especially the Dell Visor. I recommend that one. Can you guess which headset I ended up looking for? The Dell Visor, because the Windows Mixed Reality is kind of forgotten by now, but it was really a good option at the time, because when it launched, it had no compatibility, but then they made it work with Steam VR, and suddenly it was comparable in terms of games you can play to the Vive, compared to the Oculus headsets, which were kind of weird with the way they worked with Steam VR. Windows Mixed Reality worked pretty well, and it was significantly cheaper. Again, Vive's like £600, and I need to set up base stations. Windows Mixed Reality, you plug two ports in, and it just works. It just does it inside out. It's the first inside-out tracked headset, to my knowledge, and it was about £300. And later on, HP's headsets were the ones that people liked the most in the line, but I got the Dell one because the Australian man told me to. This time also marked my very first experience with rhythm games. Besides playing a console version of Dancing Stage, like at 6 years old on PS1, I saw that there was a game called Taiko no Tatsujin, which was launching on Switch, and I was like, oh, that's neat. That's the first time that game's released in English, like, in ages. And I was like, oh, that's neat. There's a demo. I'll try it out. I was hooked. I was like, oh, wow, this is fun. And then when the actual game came out, I ended up getting it at Christmas. And a few days later, for my birthday, I got this. I remember at the time, I was so excited to get this that I watched unboxing videos, which is something I very rarely do, but I swear I had a dream in which I unboxed the headset like in the video, and it lived up to my expectations at the time. Let's get on to that. The very first VR game I had, I actually got before the headset because there was a demo for it which ran on PC. It was New Retro Arcade Neon, which is an emulator front end basically, but at the time, I had it in my library, and I was waiting for other stuff to install. It was so cool, just, it's an environment, you could walk around it and interact with physics objects, that's it. But at the time, it was just a very neat introduction to VR, and I was just like, this is so cool. I think I've not actually played any amount of games in it. I literally just treated it as a physics sandbox, but it was really neat. And the other game I got on the first day was Space Pirate Trainer, because that was the game you got on VR. That was a very popular game at the time. It was fine. I had a good time with it. I can't really comment much more, but VR was, I was sold. It was a very good experience, and at the time I didn't feel hindered at all by the fact I was on Windows Mixed Reality compared to a Vive, and I felt it was definitely better than an Oculus headset. And one of the big reasons for that was the controllers. I have one here. At the time, they were, in my opinion, the best VR controller you could have, at least in terms of feature sets, because I remember Linus criticized them because they weren't necessarily the most confidence-inspiring, but they had a trackpad, which meant they were compatible with any game for a Vive, but they also had a joystick, which meant that as VR games expanded beyond simple room scale to you can walk around now, these controllers were ready for that, whilst the Vive ones you had to use the touchpad for movement. Granted, the touchpads were angled weirdly, so they were not the most intuitive to use, but it was still the most compatible controller, and again, better than what Oculus was doing. Another thing about these controllers is they use AA batteries, which at the time was just like, whatever. But we'll get back to that. In fact, speaking of Wii remotes, I took off the default wrist straps almost immediately and replaced them with Wii remote wrist straps because I was used to them and they genuinely were more secure. The next day, I got the game Super Hot VR because, again, people recommended it and it looked cool. And that was great. That is probably the second best VR game, I'd say. Maybe third best piece of VR software game thing. It is genuine. It's one of the most innovative shooters I've played in years. And the last game I got during that Christmas holidays was Beat Saber. I don't exactly remember where I'd heard about it, but it was also one of the big VR games at the time, and I was like, okay, let's try this out. At the time, I wasn't immediately hooked by it. I played it and I was like, this is fine. At the time, there was only song packs 1 and 2, and I remember I did not like most of the music at the time because my music palette was incredibly limited. I basically just didn't listen to music outside of Sonic the Hedgehog, which Sonic music's great, but at the same time, most of Beat Saber soundtrack didn't appeal to me. I think I played the Beat Saber theme a couple of times and then just didn't do it. Inexplicably, I somehow figured out how to get custom content in the game from the beginning, because I have scores that are registered on custom songs from the same day I bought it, which I don't remember. A lot of this timeline I've had to reconstruct, and I didn't remember that. But yeah, I did manage to get custom content working, but again, I kind of bounced off the game quickly, and then I went back to school, and VR was a thing I did, but less so. So, it's 2019. I've had VR for a bit, and I'm playing it a lot. Eventually I decide, let's do Beat Saber again. By this point, my music taste had evolved beyond just Sonic. I'd watched the anime series Initial D, and Eurobeat was my life. I bloody loved that style of music. I listened to it almost exclusively. It was just, I loved that kind of music, and so I obviously try and get the most iconic songs into Beat Saber. And I could find a lot of them. Almost all the charts I could find were hard or expert difficulty, and I just wasn't able to play it. I wasn't great at rhythm games, I didn't really understand how stuff worked, so I could basically play the easy charts and the normal charts, and all the custom content wasn't easy or normal, so I again bounced off pretty quickly. In addition to Taiko, I found a new music game, Hatsune Miku Project DIVA, which is really interesting because I had no knowledge of Vocaloid. The reason I got into it's really interesting. It's a long story, but let me quickly simplify. I found out through a retro gaming channel, Sega had made an anime series where it anthropomorphized the consoles into anime girls. I watched the series. I found out the series had a tie-in game with a different series called Neptunia. I downloaded the game on my PC and play it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a good game. It was the first RPG I got into, inexplicably, because Neptunia is very much an RPG lover's RPG series, but I loved it. So then, from there, I got the first game, which was on PS Vita, and I had a Vita, so I was playing that on my Vita, and I looked in the PlayStation Store and found this other anime game that was a rhythm game, and it had a free demo, so I downloaded it, just why the hell not, and I was like, oh, this is neat. And eventually I ended up buying a full copy of it because I saw it on eBay, it wasn't that expensive, and I was like, I want to see more of this. And yeah, I got into that as well, and suddenly Vocaloid was one of my... Actually, no, Vocaloid wasn't immediately an interest of mine. I just liked Project DIVA. I didn't seek out much more music beyond that, but that's a different story. I'm getting distracted. I also got back into Beat Saber. I basically found the few normal difficulty customs I could, played those alongside the main game song list until eventually I could play hard level customs. And so then I was playing normals and hards, and I was just enjoying the game. I was getting into it. And I have one video surviving from this time period. Here it is. One thing of note is that I literally would have to pause the game, flip up my headset, wipe a bunch of like sweat off of the lenses, and then resume, just because I was so unfit and they kept steaming up during gameplay. But one thing that was interesting is, as time went on, and as I played more, that happened less and less. I would stop getting sore arms from swinging around. Eventually, that would all kind of stop. I guess I got fit. Also, at some point around this time, I got a random YouTube recommendation for a song called Pixel Galaxy by the artist Snail's House. I ended up falling in love with it and the music video, so I basically then listened to all of Snail's House's discography. Then I found out that this wasn't just a single artist, it's an entire genre, kawaii future bass. So suddenly, that's also a type of music I love listening to. I found so many artists that I like, and that would continue to be my primary music genre for the next few years. So, fast forward to summer 2019, and I'm on a family holiday kind of thing, and I went to a place that had a VR arcade. Because, again, VR was cool. Everyone wanted to try VR. Not everyone wanted to spend a lot of money on it. So here you have a place in like a holiday place where you pay like, I think it was £7 to get like, I think it was like 20 minutes or 30 minutes of gameplay. And I ended up going there. They had Vives as opposed to WMR because Vive was the standard. And it was interesting because at the time I remember the screen door effect on the headset was a lot worse. Like it felt a bit more claustrophobic, a bit weirder to look at. And the controllers were interesting. I got used to them, and I thought the vibration was a lot better, but they were a lot bigger. So yeah, it was interesting to try that out. Unfortunately, it wasn't modded. I couldn't get custom songs, but I was playing the default song list. I ended up picking the song Angel Voices, and just kind of played through it, I believe on hard. And I didn't really notice. I was just like, oh yeah, this is fine. Oh, this is going on a bit long. And then I took the headset off at the end, and I'd noticed I'd gotten a very small crowd. And the guy was like, oh wow, you're good at this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just practiced at home a bit. But that was an interesting experience. It was basically the first time I'd been recognized as being good at a video game, and that was a cool thing. Inexplicably, it turns out that the song as well is like 6 minutes long, and I just didn't notice. I legit was just in a trance. I was just playing the game and just kept playing the song. Also, just want to say that that would not be possible anymore because for some reason, after Facebook acquired Beat Saber, they killed off the ability for people to run the game in a commercial context, in an arcade context, to run tournaments for the game, basically do anything to help promote it or expand it beyond where it was at, which is like arguably one of my least favorite things Facebook has ever done, probably slightly underneath the massive amount of like data scandals and surveillance, you know, bit under that. Also around this time, I watch videos of a game and I discover the concept of custom avatars, the idea that you could, instead of just capturing the game window in OBS, you could have a camera positioned off to the side and you could embody a virtual avatar which then moves around as you do. I forget what the video was, but I wanted to do that. I couldn't get it set up because I believe the mod wasn't updated or whatever. I don't even know if I had the game modded at that point because mods were hard to set up back then, but I loved the idea of a custom avatar and I wanted to try that out. This is interesting if you know where this story's going, but we'll get to that later. So then the summer holidays ended and I just kind of go back to school, and my school day was 9 to 3 p.m. and then I get home at like 4, and 4 p.m. is my cutoff for VR. If I use it after that point, assuming I don't even get a headache, I will almost certainly not be able to sleep that night because my eyes will feel like they've been forced open, and it impacted my sleep too much for me to justify it. So yeah, no more VR, no more Beat Saber. Until the October half term. Around this point, I just got back into it. It took a little bit of time to de-rust, but I was getting into it. I was playing a lot, and I got mods again. I got custom charts. I cleared my first expert. I don't know what it is, I don't have a record, it's probably a song in the default song list, but I was climbing up, I was getting better. Also around this time, I acquire a used PlayStation 3 console for about £30 and take it home with Gran Turismo 5 and nothing else. I wanted to test out the PS1 compatibility, so I put in the first game I could think of, which was one of my childhood PS1 games, Dancing Stage Party Edition. This is where this comes in. This was the first time I'd actually played this game with things like reading comprehension and the ability to play video games, and I really enjoyed it. This is fun. I went from playing the easy difficulty to the normal difficulty, and kind of stopped around there, but I was like, this is fun. I had dance mats in the loft, so I hooked that up to the PlayStation. I had a super jank gameplay setup.
Please ignore the mess. My room is constantly a mess. Also ignore the fact this is not the same desk. I've since got a new desk. Basically what I would do, the dance mat would be here on the carpet where it doesn't work well. I would plonk my hands here as a bar. Terrible setup. Actually terrible. But that was what I practiced on because that's all I had.
I'm a bit taller now. And I practiced this because I'd found out that there were arcades in London that had cool games, more than just Cruising Blast. Specifically, there was one in Soho called Las Vegas Arcade Soho that had Initial D, which was like the coolest thing ever, and I really wanted to play that game. However, it turned out that they had gotten rid of it mere weeks before I was going to go there. However, that arcade's decline is for another day. I also found out other arcades that had DDR in addition to Las Vegas, which had Tycho and no longer Initial D. So I basically just did a round trip of all of them. I went to the first one, Vega London, where I played DDR, and I believe that was the first time I played this weird DJ game that I didn't really understand. And then I went to LV, I played Tycho, and then I went to the last arcade, Namco Funscape, which was my favourite at the time. I was like, this one's big, this one's cool, and they have DDR in this big white cab, and it's like, oh, that's neat. So I played there, and then around this time I just kind of kept playing. DDR became a game I played quite a lot. I enjoyed it, I enjoyed the songs, and I enjoyed going to the arcade. Interestingly enough, Namco Funscape actually had Beat Saber Arcade, which I played once. I don't remember what headset it was using, I just remember that it wouldn't fit to my head and just was a bit hard to see through, and the controllers were like Vive ones but really long, and it was like £3 for one song, which makes Stepmaniacs' pricing look actually reasonable. Also, those cabs are all decommissioned now. I don't think there's a single one left in existence. It's basically lost media because, again, Mark Zuckerberg being like, no, Beat Saber Arcade. I believe the cabs have been repurposed to run a Star Wars game and then kind of disappeared as VR, no longer really popular in arcades. But anyway, I basically just kept playing Beat Saber, you know, anytime I got the weekends, the holidays, and eventually by the end of the year, I managed to get custom avatars set up for myself. Well, set up. They never really worked as well as I thought, but hey, I did manage to get them working. And interestingly enough, I even found out you could make your own in Unity, in which Unity was an engine I was somewhat familiar with as I had aspirations of doing game dev at the time. So I tried making custom avatar, I got some bone configured wrong, and it didn't work. But those skills would come in handy a lot later on. At the time, for some reason, I made my avatar online IF from the Neptunia series. Hey, remember when I mentioned that earlier? That was relevant. So that's what I ended up using for my Beat Saber recordings. However, Beat Saber doesn't look very good, so we're in VRChat, baby. This recording setup's actually super jank. I've got the mic in this hand here. So yeah, enjoy. So, we're now in 2020, and remember when January happened, and there was like a little bit of fire in Australia? That was surely the worst thing that was going to happen all year. So yeah, March rolls around, and we go into lockdown, which I know for a lot of people, lockdown was quite hard, because obviously you're stuck at home. That's going to be hard. But for me, it was actually one of the best times of my life up until that point, partially because I was like 14 years old. It was a time when I was starting to mature, grow up, trying out new things. It was when I started actually going outside, touching grass, real grass, not this grass. This is virtual grass. But anyway, yeah, basically Beat Saber was part of my daily routine. I'd play it every morning as my exercise, well, other than going outside. I listened to the Defunctland podcast because that was my 2020 kind of interest I got into. I missed that thing. Also, now that you mentioned custom avatars, I did try VRChat out, you know, with the headset. Just a little bit, just a small amount. Obviously, as you can see, I've played it a bit more since. However, initially, I just kind of couldn't get into it. My very first avatar was... Ignore how weird this looks. This was the very first avatar I tried because, well, I wasn't really sure what else to do. It doesn't really work with the foot tracking. Obviously, it has no other tracking, but that's kind of where VRChat was at the time. As you can see, I wasn't exactly very sociable. I didn't really get anything done. I have like almost 100 hours in this game, and I have not interacted with more than about 3 people. So, it's worth remembering, the Windows Mixed Reality headset didn't have any built-in audio. there was no microphone, and there was no speakers. It had a little headphone thing around the back, which you could plug in, which wasn't a huge issue, you know. I used Bluetooth headphones initially, which is not a good idea for rhythm games. Eventually I switched to wired headphones, and that did solve the issue quite a bit. But say, for streaming, that's a bit harder. For recording, for even playing VRChat, I could either use the microphone on my desktop, which is all the way over there, and then it doesn't pick me up very well, or I use the microphone on my Bluetooth headphones, which is bad. So, bit of an issue.
If you think you got it bad with like the built-in mic of the original Vive, try having no mic. Still better than the Rift S mic though.
Also around this time I saw people use the Oculus Quest headset to play big maps. I think either 10 lane or 100 lane was the one. So at first it's just like, oh, you got a big play space, you're running to one end and then you're running to the other. Ignore the fact that I have a very small play space, so I can't demonstrate it. Even now, my bedroom is not very big. So I saw these people using the Quest headsets, and they were like running across the entire park, and that was really cool. My legs bugged out. Theoretically speaking, having a Windows mixed reality headset with the inside out tracking would be easier than, say, if I'd have gone Vive, which has outside in tracking. However, I would have needed a gaming laptop, and also if you use them in direct sunlight, that apparently like kills the sensor. Oh, it's especially annoying because I was originally going to get an Oculus Quest. Literally, I saw the announcement for the Quest 1, and I was just like, do I wait? Do I wait like an extra few months and get it early 2019? Or do I just get in right now around my birthday, which is in December? And I was just like, let's go get the Windows Mixed Reality headset, because I don't actually know if the Quest connected to a PC initially. So I was like, we'll get the standalone or the PC. Well, I already got a PC, so I might as well get the PC headset. I regret that in hindsight, because now they're killing off support for Windows Mixed Reality, and that headset's basically a paperweight, whilst the Quest 1, while kind of weird, is at the very least still very much usable, especially as a PC VR headset. You know, shout out to Kai VR, that guy says it's the best thing to do as a budget headset. I don't know if necessarily true, because I don't have one, but at the very least, it is, kind of a regret. I do very much one day want to try out a full big map Beat Saber and do the running around. That'd be really fun, but obviously, that's a while away. I don't have the money for that right now. It was also around this time that I started watching tutorial videos, because up until this point I'd just been playing, practicing, that's it. But there were some songs which I wanted to pass, but I couldn't, and I didn't really know what to do, so I saw YouTube recommend me how to get better at Beat Saber. So I watched them. There was actually a lot of debate at the time on what was the best way to improve. Some people were like, no, you should go slow-mo. You should go in practice mode and play very slowly, and then build up the muscle memory, and then that's how you learn the chart. But then other people were like, no, you have to go and play with no fail, so then you do it at full speed and get used to that. And ultimately, I think it's a bit of both. I think ultimately you got to play it at full speed to pass it eventually, but also playing in practice mode at like half speed really helped. I think the one chart I remember for this specifically was Outbreak. That chart has a certain pattern. You got like that was very hard. I couldn't do that at the time because I wasn't used to more complex patterns. I believe I could do like, you know, fourth notes and eighth notes maybe, but like 16ths, that was hard. That was really hard. So I think practicing it at like half speed and then 75%, then 90, eventually up to 100%, that definitely helped. But also, I think Beat Saber's health system is incredibly harsh. It is incredibly harsh. Basically, because if you miss like one pattern, that's it. You're dead. And I don't think that's a very fair way to score a rhythm game. It makes it when you do clear, it's like, wow, that's really good. But then it's so hard to get clears on harder songs because you basically have to, not full combo, obviously, you can miss, but you can't miss a whole pattern. You have to clear every pattern, which is different to other rhythm games that I play later on, which are much more generous, where, say, you have to just not have the health bar deplete, but the health bar's more generous, or where you have to get the health bar up to a certain point by the end. I like that style the most. Another thing I did, in addition to watching just basic tutorials, is I saw someone talk about the claw grip and other different ways to play the game, different grips. And that was really interesting because I remember I'm playing on mixed reality controllers and those sucked. Those were weird. You had to hold them like sideways. I tried doing the claw grip because then you go like, yeah. And that's kind of an interesting way of playing. Didn't work out, but it was neat to try at least. During this time period that I also made my big, I'd say the big 3 achievements, but I only say that because those are the videos that I ended up uploading to YouTube, and they're the only ones I have left, because I kind of corrupted my hard drive. So, yeah, I've lost all my old videos, which sucks, but hopefully by the time this video is, you know, being edited, hopefully it will be out relatively soon. I'll hopefully have gotten it restored, but yeah, no, right now I don't have any recordings, so the big 3 would be the ones I uploaded to YouTube. Starting off with Dimension Tripper. How fitting with this avatar, hey? That song, in case you didn't know, is the opening theme to the Neptunia anime. It wasn't actually that significant to me at the time. However, I wanted to get it in Beat Saber because I was just interested in Neptunia songs, and that's the one someone had charted because I guess the anime is more popular in games. However, it was an Expert Plus only, and most of the chart is actually pretty easy. However, in the full song, there is a guitar solo, and this is charted to the full song, because I guess they wanted to be like Osu. Whatever, I don't like that. But I was willing to play it, because, you know, I was desperate for Neptunia content. And that guitar solo, man, that is hard. I'm used to streams in rhythm games now, but back then, a death stream like that was very hard, and it took me a lot to beat that. First off, I played it in practice mode and just kept doing it. I just got to that section and I'd practice. I literally went on Reddit because I was using Reddit at the time and asked for advice on like, hey, how do I do this pattern? People were like, well, you go like this. So I did. And so just practice, and especially using practice mode, the slow down, build up the muscle memory like I did with Outbreak, and eventually I hit it in practice mode and I was like, hell yeah. I even did it with the avatar on, so my hands were like covered up by this. And then a few months later, I actually hit it in full speed, and that was genuinely one of my best achievements at the time. I was just like, you can see in the video, I hit the pattern, and then afterwards I'm like full of energy. I'm practically bursting, but obviously I have to finish the rest of the chart. The final stretch of that chart, it feels like a victory lap. It feels like I've done it, I've won, now I just got to do it. There's actually a harder part later on, but it doesn't feel as hard to me. At one point I was like, oh, maybe I actually will fail this, and I didn't. I hit it. It felt so good. That's arguably one of my biggest achievements in rhythm games. Not because I haven't done harder things, but because nothing has felt like this, a big wall that I then punched down and got through. So yeah, that was really cool. The other chart is Red Zone. You probably know Red Zone. It's a funny meme, and it's also in 2DX and shit. So I believe what happened was I had a friend, hey, shout out to Kian, I know you watch my stuff, and he basically sent me a video of some guy playing Red Zone on Beat Saber, and he was like, bet you can't do that. Nuh-uh, no way you can do that. And I was like, I think I can do that. So then, like a week later, I passed the chart, because at this point I was basically cracked at Beat Saber. I could play almost anything. And yeah, I beat it. And looking back at the video, that chart is insane. At the end of the chart, there's a big death stream, and the rest of the chart is still pretty hard. And I'm impressed that I was able to do that, especially because Beat Saber's a physical game. I'm so out of shape, I'm sweating delivering this monologue to you. Imagine actually like moving your arms, blah, 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 blah. That's hard. That's very hard. But it was pretty good where he was like, hey, bitch, you can't do this. And I was like, yeah, I can. And then I did do it. I was like, yeah, eat that. I did it. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it is a good memory. And the last video I have is it's the Camellia song Senpai Notice Me. There was a medley song of like a bunch of different songs, and then Senpai Notice Me was one of the songs in that, so I downloaded it separately. It's 4 minutes, it's long, it is hard, it's not overcharted, it's not undercharted, it's just a very hard song, and I just did it. I didn't even think about it, I was just like, I didn't even think of anything at the time. It's just by the 3rd minute, by the death stream, I was like, oh, I'm quite tired doing this. But I did it, I uploaded it to YouTube. Inexplicably, someone who followed my channel back when I did Minecraft videos in 2015 commented on it and was like, what the hell is this? I am impressed that you are still watching, like 5 years later. If you're actually watching this video, shout outs to you, thanks for supporting me. I know. And those are the big 3 videos. I do have other videos that I uploaded afterwards, but none of those songs are really as significant, nothing that was really as hard. I basically, by that point, had no more unfinished business. I'd done all the hardest stuff I could do, and Any song that was harder was just felt like overkill, and I didn't really care. And also lockdown ended, and biggest thing is I found other rhythm games. However, because this isn't in VR, I'm gonna go back to old me, who's gonna talk to you about that. So anyway, so I mentioned earlier I couldn't go to arcades. I did a lot of research. I found the website Xenius iVanisher, which just had info on them. I found this one documentary about Las Vegas, focusing on the player Toby Nanakin, which was uploaded to YouTube by Toby Nanakin. He had a copy of it somewhere from a TV show, I think. I don't know. But I was really engrossed in that. I was in a Discord server surrounded by other people being autistic about DDR. It was like, rhythm games were very much what my interest at that point. That was my passion. Through this, I found the rhythm game Beatmania IIDX, which I had actually played previously at Vega London. I just wasn't really aware of anything about it. I don't even remember what song I played. I literally played a tutorial. Here's a video of that. Look, it's the same shirt, I think. And I ended up getting a 2DX PS2 controller because they were cheap, and they were cheap. I was thinking, well, I got a PS2 USB adapter. Surely it'll be fine if I use it with that. So, here it is. It's very hard. It took me a lot to learn this game. The main problem was the USB adapter I used. It came with one. However, I believe the polling rate was so bad that basically it was impossible to play. In 2DX, there is a meme chart called Gamble. In that chart, the timing is made incredibly hard so that basically you can only get goods. If you want to get a great or a just great, which is the hardest timing to get in 2DX, it's very hard on Gamble. It's a joke chart. Every single chart felt like playing with Gamble timing when I was playing with that controller and that adapter. But that was all I knew. I'd not played anything better, so I just stormed through getting basically C's and B's at best because I had nothing better. Obviously my timing was worse then, but that really hardened me as a gamer because it was so hard. Eventually I found an adapter where I believe there's a teeny tiny little Arduino in here, and this one works flawlessly, no notes. It just works, and I can play the game now, and it doesn't have ridiculous timing issues. So yay. So remember earlier when I said the controllers were actually really good, guys, and like they're the best ones you could get because like they're compatible with Vive ones and they have a joystick. Well, yes and no. The design, theoretically, yes, it was the best of both worlds at the time. Obviously, I understand VR's moved on from then. We have stuff like the Knuckles controllers of the Valve Index, which, have actual finger presence, and at that point, what good is there to have a trackpad to do your fingers when you can literally just do your fingers? So, it was good for compatibility at the time, but VR's moved on. Also, issues. Yeah, no, the biggest issue was that my left controller had a battery life issue where basically no matter what batteries I put in it and no matter how charged the batteries were, they would report to be on 10% or less. Even if I had batteries that reported as being at 80% in the right controller, swap them to the left controller, basically immediately on 10%, which at first you wouldn't think is an issue. However, Windows had a weird, annoying feature where if the controller's on 10% or less, the vibration doesn't work. And Beat Saber uses the vibration to help you time. So basically, I was playing where I was only able to feel if I hit notes with my right hand, not my left hand, which was very annoying. Additionally, if I just left the controller out of sight, it would disconnect. So, in the menus, it's turned off, I'm going to turn it back on. Sometimes during gameplay it would even turn off because it thought it was on low battery. And I need to stress, this wasn't because it was on low battery, it's because it thought it was. I could take the batteries out of this, put it in the other controller, and it would report them as being on like 50%. I could take them, put them in a Wii remote, and it said they were on 100%. So that was incredibly annoying. At this time, I could also just feel the game pushing up against the boundaries of the computer. Keep in mind, it was a GTX 1050 and an Intel i5 from 2017, I think. It was not cut out to be a VR PC. And initially, if you wanted to record yourself playing, you just had to do it. Eventually, Score Saber would add the ability to do replays, so you could just watch back your best play of a chart in desktop and just record that. However, at the time, I didn't know that in 2020, at least early on, so I was literally recording while playing, and that meant I was playing at like 30 FPS. I was basically preparing myself for VRChat public lobbies. So the stability combined with the bad controllers, combined with I didn't have anywhere to go, combined with I couldn't do any kind of streaming or recording because I didn't have full body, it basically just meant that I had nowhere left to go with Beat Saber, and I was getting into other games. I found this game called DanceRush, which I couldn't play. I would watch videos of other people playing it. I'd get the video up on my TV and just make a fool of myself in my bedroom, essentially, by sliding on my carpet floor. Barely worked. But I learnt that game. I basically taught myself to shovel dance, at least very basic shovel, in my room. And all this other stuff was taking up my time, and Beat Saber just kind of was less and less appealing because I'd kind of hit a wall. I'd obviously played a bit, but eventually I just was like, eh. So eventually I just stopped playing Beat Saber altogether, and at that point, that meant I had no reason to use my VR headset. Literally, I'd get it out for Beat Saber and that's it. Because the only other game I really, really liked on it was Super Hot, and that's like a 1 hour game, and then you're done with it. So I would just, no more Beat Saber, no more VR, basically. It also didn't help VR didn't mesh well with my incredibly fragile body. Body? I don't know. Essentially, I get migraines, and eye-related issues, vision-related issues, doesn't go well with strapping a bright screen to your face. Obviously, I never actually got a VR-induced migraine, but it is just not good. And as my health issues continuously got worse and worse, VR just wasn't appealing. My health issues have just continued to spiral down to the point where I could easily make a 30-minute video called Rhythm Games Are Bad for My Health, which concludes with me admitting defeat and just not playing rhythm games or, hell, video games anymore. But that's for another day, and also very much a pessimistic look at it. I hope that things will improve someday, but that was why I didn't play Beat Saber anymore, didn't play VR anymore. That is, until at some point I discovered VRChat was actually a lot more interesting than I thought. I got into it back when I was first doing VR because it was a haha funny Uganda Knuckles game, and I would occasionally, you know, bounce on and off of it, just trying it out, but I never really got into it because, you know, that requires going up and talking to people. However, first off, I transed my gender, and I also saw a really good video documenting VRChat and its relation to gender identity, and I was like, that's really interesting. This game looks really interesting now. Suddenly I'm interested in social VR as a concept. I made an avatar, I kind of tried it out a bit, and I even managed to try getting it working with my jank full body setups with like Kinect and whatever. And then I fell off of it because I can't talk to people. What do you want me to do? The best I got out of it was I found a game called Hook Jumpers, which was a fun little thing to speedrun until I kind of stopped doing that, and then yeah, no more VRChat. And then again, Holiday 23, I got the bug for VRChat again. I found multiple YouTube channels, most notably shoutouts to Boneless VR. Can you tell? And my health issues were bad, I couldn't do anything. And I was just kind of thinking, this is hard, because full body, it's moved on a bit, but And I was thinking, I gotta finally upgrade headsets. I cannot use the Windows Mixed Reality anymore. Especially because Microsoft announced they're killing it off. No more Windows Mixed Reality. At some point, I will turn on my computer, plug that headset in, and Windows will be like, oh, it doesn't work, mate. You've updated too far, you can't use it anymore. The Quest 3 looked really appetizing, too expensive. Quest 2, cheap, and as a result, it's like, I'm on the Quest 3, and then suddenly it's like, oh, get the Quest Pro because it has eye tracking, and it's even more expensive. I just keep checking auction sites, I keep checking Marketplace, and eventually I find someone selling a HTC Vive for £50. So I bought it. Interestingly enough, actually, this is a Vive Pre, which I believe was like a test unit or something sent out to reviewers. The listing said it was an ex-retail unit. Makes no difference to me other than the fact the IPD adjustment slider is apparently a slightly different texture. Also, these ones are the trackpads on them feel much nicer than the Vive ones I have bought since then, which are retail, because I have base stations now. You know what that means? I can do actual full body tracking. Initially I was thinking, well, I have savings, I might be able to buy Vive trackers or Tundra trackers. And then I remembered, nah, let's do this jank. Because this is a Vive wand. This is just a thing that tracks. Surely I can strap one of them and pretend they're a tracker, right? Turns out people have found ways to modify the firmware so they report to be trackers. Turns out you can buy them for £10 in CEX. So I did. Turns out you can use Steam controller dongles as Watchman dongles, and I have a Steam controller with a dongle, so I ended up buying 2 more Vive ones, except the only real difference is they came with wrist straps, which were not as good as the Wiimote straps. Gotta keep with the Wiimote straps. And the trackpads were much worse, but that might just be because they're used. And I did the boneless thing of strapping them to Crocs. This is not good. Once I get zip ties, I'm fixing this. But I have full body now. That's exciting. In fact, in the VRChat segment of this video, I have been using full body. So a lot of my issues with VR that were preventing me from doing stuff are kind of gone now. Like, obviously I still get issues regarding exertion and whatever, but like, I've been able to play Beat Saber a bit with this Vive, and it's been pretty alright. And I have full body now. Obviously my room's way too small to be able to do a lot of stuff I want to do, but we may be back. Ultimately, I don't know what the future holds, but hopefully you enjoyed hearing about my past. Thanks for watching. Hey, you gonna end the video there? I didn't even talk about the whole, this game changed my life thing, which was, you know, in the title. I should address that. I wouldn't actually say Beat Saber itself changed my life. Rhythm games definitely changed my life, and Beat Saber is just one of them. I think the biggest impact Beat Saber itself had on me was that it taught me the process of getting better at games. It taught me improving at games, which was not something I'd done up until that point. I just played rhythm games casually. Beat Saber was the first one I had done in a way that I actually wanted to improve at it. That is probably Beat Saber's single biggest contribution, is it's the first rhythm game I got good at. Now, whether I would have ended up playing other rhythm games with or without Beat Saber, hard to say. I was playing other games both before, during, and after my time with Beat Saber, so I think it would have happened eventually, but Beat Saber definitely did speed it up. And I think improving at other games would have been a lot harder if I hadn't had that experience with Beat Saber, so I am very much thankful for this game. Even though I never actually ended up doing all I wanted to do with it. But who knows, I might actually end up returning to it soon. We have no idea what the future holds. In fact, if you'd be interested in a follow-up video, please let me know, because there's a lot of stuff I wanted to include in this video, but I forgot to. Main reason why I quit actually was just because it got too hot in the British summer. Like, it wasn't, it's too hot. No, it's literally just I couldn't play it because it was too hot. Also, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, shoot them off in the comments. I think they're down below. I don't think YouTube's going to roll out those stupid UI changes. I hope not. So yeah, drop a comment while you're at it. Might as well like and subscribe, because I actually got new stuff coming soon. Look forward to that. But for now, genuinely, thanks for watching this. It was a lot of effort to make. Hopefully you enjoyed. Bye. Swap this for left controller. Almost immediately. That's my thing's falling over.